Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. As usual, the presentation will be recorded and uploaded to the YouTube channel so everybody can view it afterwards. But welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the actual competition, some changes that were made both to the competition format, the requirements for the competition, what you need to do, changes to the game itself, Fuzzy Asteroids, and some changes to the prize structures, which we think will be more fun and offer more opportunities for people to win more prizes. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation first. So lots of changes. There were a lot of changes to the game itself, Fuzzy Asteroids. We'll actually go over those in detail in a second. I also want to highlight that we've been discussing a change to the game where we are going to switch to a new game, potentially. We are actually developing a simulation environment / game that is very similar to Fuzzy Asteroids, but is much more conducive to machine learning. So it has much faster evaluation time, it's more lightweight, it's way less buggy, and it's specifically built with machine learning in mind. So we're working on that. It is something that we are likely to implement, and we will make that decision soon. That decision will be made by December. We're leaning towards doing this, but if we do, we will have another presentation in early December where we go over the game, the changes that you'll need to make, etc. It'll be very similar to Fuzzy Asteroids, such that if you've already started developing an AI agent for Fuzzy Asteroids, it should be fairly easy to port it over to the new game. But we'll go over all of that, and we want to do that to give people plenty of time to develop their agents during the spring and over winter break. Again, there will be more detail on that after that decision is made, but we will notify everybody with plenty of lead time and go over it in complete detail. For the time being, though, we'll still go over the changes that were made to Fuzzy Asteroids, just in case we decide to stick with it for whatever reason. There are many changes that are beneficial for training aspects and adversarial parts of the game. The competition itself, we are doing qualification again, and this year qualification, which will be in early March, what you'll need to do is submit a version of your agent. It doesn't have to be the final version, but a stable version at the time. And what we're going to do is run it through a bunch of scenarios and score it. And we'll be using that scoring for seeding in the competition. In the competition itself, instead of evaluating agents separately, because the game is adversarial this year, we're going to have a playoff. The playoff structure will be a single elimination bracket with seeding and buys, and the seeding order is determined by the performance during qualification, and buys as well. So let's say, we'll get into an example of this, but if we have more teams than a single elimination bracket would allow, we'll essentially have play-in games, wildcard games, and the top rated teams, however many there are, however the numbers work out, will receive buys in those games. The live stream for the competition, the details are TBD currently, but it'll be streamed much like last year, such that the organizers and team members can communicate while their agents are playing the game and others can view. The way it's been done in the past is that we have a combination of something like WebEx or Zoom or some other meeting software in combination with a separate streaming platform like YouTube or Twitch. We haven't decided on that this year. We'll be doing some testing with those to determine, but again, there will be plenty of lead time for the teams, and we'll be sending that out well before the competition. Yeah. Explainability. You know, this is the explainable fuzzy challenge. The big change this year is that you have to shoutcast your agent's moves. Shoutcasting is, I didn't know this term before somewhat recently, but apparently that's the name of esports announcers when they are basically narrating what the players, or in this case, the AI agents, are doing And what you're going to do is you're going to have English language sentences that are being output from your AI system, and we're going to use text to voice. There's a Python package called PyTTSX3 where you can output text to speech in real time on the fly. And so we'll be using that. We'll give more details on how we'll integrate those, but basically you'll just have a function that you output those strings to, and your agent will then explain what it's doing throughout the scenarios. Something fun that we're adding is ship customization. Now, this also depends on the game that we use. If we stick with Fuzzy Asteroids, we'll give you the details on that. Well, we'll give you the details regardless, but for instance, you would be changing the aesthetics of the ship sprites, and we want you to customize it. So you can take the ship sprites that exist in Fuzzy Asteroids already and customize them. If we move to the new game, we'll give you a template or other file that you can modify, such that you can add your own patterns and colors, logos, names, whatever you want to add, within reason, but we'll talk about that more. We also have some prizes potentially associated with that, but we'll get into that in a second. So some of the updates for Fuzzy Asteroids, we updated to version 3.2.5. This is up on PyPy, and you can get the latest version by running this command. I recommend doing a force reinstall just to make sure that you get the latest and correct versions of the dependencies for everything. But I would go ahead and install that because it has a bunch of changes for adversarial situations. If you want to see extremely detailed info on the changes, there's the change log. The main changes are to the scenario and score classes. And in addition, we now have ammo limits for a particular scenario. So you can pass that when you create a scenario that gets passed to the game object when you create it. You can set ammo limits based on the number of asteroids that are in the scenario. And this was introduced for a reason, so that is fair warning. You will likely see ammo limits in certain scenarios in the competition, so that is likely something that you will want to take into account with your AI system. Adversarial info, there will be baseline AI agents that are provided to you to train against. Again, this depends on the environment, but regardless, we will give you very basic AIs to train against initially. What I highly recommend, though, is iterating your agent and periodically saving it off and training against those earlier versions in order to make your agent better and better. This in reinforcement learning circles is known as adversarial self-play, and it's one of the ways to generate better and better solutions, especially in situations where you may not have a good AI to play against to make yours better. In this case, you just play against yourself. There is now more data available, not a ton, but slightly more data available to your agents in the ship and asteroid objects. So the asteroid object state data, this is what it looks like. It includes frequency, you probably won't be using that, position of the asteroid, velocity of the asteroid, size, and angle. The ship objects, the data that they give you is respawning, which is a Boolean. Respawn time left, frequency, position, velocity, etc. Now, though, we also include team and lives remaining. So you can factor those in. And team is simply an integer for which team you're on. There's only 2 teams in adversarial Fuzzy Asteroids. And this attribute for your ship determines that. It'll either just be a 1 or a 2. We also added more info for the bullet objects and the general data dictionary that is available to your agent every time step from the simulation. So for bullets, most of the same info, but also now team. It's unlikely that you'll actually be using that, but maybe in some cases you want to take that into account. That's up to you. The data, so the full data that you actually get back to your agent that's available every time step is this dictionary, and that includes frame, the time in the simulation, the stopping condition, the map dimensions, the asteroids. And so this is all of the info for all the asteroids all the info for all of the bullets, and all the info for the ships. Now, you have more information available to you about your own ship than you do other ships. But we'll talk about that too in a second. Yeah, so let's actually look at some of the changes. Let's see, let's go to scenario. So right now this is in Fuzzy Asteroids. This is in util.py. There were changes made to the score class and to the scenario class. So now in score, you have things like the number of bullets that hit asteroids. You have accuracy based off of that. Bullets remaining, you get this now. So this tells you how many bullets you have remaining. When they're set to -1, that means you have unlimited ammo. And the index for each of these, since these are lists, is the team. So for team 1, etc. Same thing with everything else. Accuracy is now being calculated correctly such that you can use this in training. Previously, there was an issue with the older versions where it was being calculated based on the number of asteroids hit. The problem there is that bullets could hit multiple asteroids in a single shot. And so it was possible to have accuracy levels above 100%. And that led to some spurious actions during training in certain situations. So that's been fixed. So you can now use accuracy in training, and the maximum is 100%. The other changes to scenarios, like we mentioned, you have this ammo limit multiplier and a stopping condition called stop if no ammo. And the ammo limit multiplier, this is a float. And what that is it calculates the number of the maximum number of potential asteroid objects. So when you hit an asteroid, it splits into smaller and smaller pieces. You can figure out what the maximum number of those could possibly be in a scenario. And then this is just a ratio of that. So if this is set to 1, you will have as many bullets as the maximum number of asteroids. If this is set to 0.5, that means you have half of the number of bullets as there are potential asteroids. And so you may need to be more accurate. And if you leave it at default 0, it defaults to unlimited ammo. And then this, the stop if no ammo, this is a condition where if you run out of ammunition, it stops the scenario. If this is false, it just keeps going. So yeah. And some other termination condition will have to stop the simulation. So those are the main changes to the game. There were also a few other changes. Let's see. That was the main change, but most of it is related to the ship states that you're getting back, which, let's see, let's go down. Yeah, this is what you have available to you, but you can still only send back the same things from the controller, which were the turn rate, firing, and thrust. So those haven't changed. The main thing is just the data that you're getting back. But you can see that in the data that you have available to you. So, for instance, in the example controllers, the input data in the actions function, in the examples that you have, this input data is that data structure from the environment. So if we go to the game, it is, let's see. Yeah, is this data. So that is the input data that you're actually getting back to your controller. So those are the main changes to Fuzzy Asteroids, along with some other UI changes to make reading the score easier and things like that. Again, don't spend too much time developing really complicated agents for this, because we may be switching to the new game. We will make that decision very soon, like I said, by early December, and we'll notify you and give a new presentation on what you need to do. So don't worry too much about that. As far as scheduling, qualification will be in early March, specifically March 7th. And again, it will consist of evaluating each team's agent against a number of other agents and scenarios. The scores from that will determine the seeding in the competition playoff. The final AI agents are due on March 27th. This is the Monday before the competition. It must be in a repository as we described at the beginning of the competition. If anybody's having trouble with that, please contact us. We can help you with that. We'll give more detail on what you exactly need to do when we get closer to the date, probably in the couple weeks before then. But it should be relatively easy. Then the final competition date is March 31st. This is a Friday. We're changing that from a Saturday that it previously was. This is not set in stone yet. So if there are major issues with the state, it's still possible to change it to a Saturday, most likely April 1st. But yeah, that's, again, most of these things are tentative and can still be changed. We will be solidifying them during the spring semester, though. The tentative agenda, again, everything's tentative, but what we've done in the past and what we're likely doing again this year is student presentations. Depending on the number of teams that are competing, which you have to qualify to compete, we will be giving likely 5 minutes per team. It will be very short presentations showing your solution and results. We will give you a template and or requirements that will tell you exactly what you need to do for this presentation. We might also change this to be such that you make a video and simply upload it. That will be decided, but it depends on the timing, because if we have too many teams, we're not going to be able to give everybody enough time in order to get through them. So in that case, we'll likely have everybody upload them to YouTube or some other thing like that. But again, we'll know more when we get closer. The live stream itself, again, we will host on a streaming service like Zoom or WebEx, something like that. The students may be interviewed while their agent is playing the game. So what we need you to do is identify a spokesperson on your team that will speak during the stream. It's not going to be anything difficult. It's more going to be like, you know, what decisions did you make when creating your agent? How did you train it? What results did you see? Anything interesting? Things like that. And then after the competition itself, we will have closing statements and some preliminary results. The awards, we will be deciding, we'll be gathering all the information and calculating winners and all that stuff in the week after the competition. And so that student teams will be notified of the final results and prize amounts no later than April 14th, provided that the competition date is this day or April 1st. Let's move on to the format itself. So again, it'll be in a playoff. The seeding determined by qualification evaluation. We'll see an example of what the bracket might look like. The scenarios, in general, these are chosen to elicit certain behaviors and performance from the agents. Now, because we're doing adversarial, it may be such that in certain scenarios, one agent has an initial advantage over the other just due to positioning and where the asteroids are. If that is the case, we will evaluate the agents in both of those positions. So, you know, one in one spot, one in the other, and then vice versa, to make sure that it's a fair comparison in each case. Say, for example, we have 19 teams. This is what the bracket might look like, where we have these seedings, the seeds for each entry in the bracket being determined by qualification scores. And in this case, because we're doing a single team elimination, or sorry, a single elimination bracket, we would have 3 play-in games. So we would have 16 and 17 playing each other, where team 1 gets a bye, 15 and 18 playing each other, where team 2 gets a bye, and 14 and 19 playing each other, where 3 gets a bye. Then what happens is normal progression through the bracket. However, we're changing the prize payout structure such that you will receive prize money payouts cumulatively for each game that you win, with the exception of the play-in games. I'll explain that more in 1 second. So for explainability, like I mentioned, they will need to shoutcast their behavior, and you'll do this by outputting English language statements, strings, and then passing it through a text-to-speech module. We will run them through dedicated scenarios to elicit those explainable behaviors. It might be something like you have multiple asteroids, and we want to see which asteroid your agent targets in certain situations, whether that, based on the perceived threat of asteroids, or maybe it's a situation where it's you trying to maximize the score, and so you're going after one of the larger asteroids, something like that. It may also be cases where it's an adversarial thing, and you have to explain why you did something. We will give more detail on this on what it needs to output exactly. Don't worry about it. You mainly need to focus on outputting the behavior itself through the text-to-speech. Your solutions will be judged on their explainability by a panel. The judges will assess the quality and presentation of explanations from the AI. And so some of the things they may base that scoring on, we had a rubric last year, we'll likely use some of the same criteria, which is ease of understanding of the explanation, the quality of the explanations, the sensibility of actions from the explanations, and innovation, things like that. So we'll talk about those metrics and give a lot more direction for the exact format that your system needs to output. That'll be determined by the start of spring semester. An example of one of these scenarios is maybe you'll have asteroids in different locations, and this one's heading straight for your ship, even though this one is next to you and not moving. So we may be interested to know which asteroid your system targets and why. It may be that you target this one initially, but once this one reaches some threshold, you start targeting that one. And if that's the case, we may want to understand why it's selecting what when. This is just an example. There will be multiple of these. They won't be extremely complex scenarios, but we are going to be focused on cases where we're interested to know why an AI agent is doing what it does. We've already gone through this. The one other thing is that for the live stream, it'll be recorded as usual and hosted on our YouTube channel. Everything else we've already talked about. Prizes. So the total prize pool so far for this year is $3,400. For the playoff itself, we have a pool of approximately, currently the idea is, based on a 16-team playoff. If we have play-in games, those will not receive prizes, but assuming there's a 16-team playoff, we'll have a $2,400 pool. And the amounts that you win in each round get progressively larger. If we have a smaller, or if we have more teams than that, we will adjust this accordingly. But it'll be very similar to this, where you're receiving graduated prize amounts per round. The winners in each round, so you're playing against someone else in a round, the winners in each round score more than their opponents by hitting more asteroids. In the event of a tie, accuracy is used as a tiebreaker. So imagine, like I said, a 16-team playoff, which is 4 rounds. Winning in the first round could be something like $100, and that would be $100 for every team that wins in the first round. So if we go back and look at this bracket, if you are in this round, if you win this first round, you get that $100. If you win in the second round, you would get an increased amount, maybe an additional 150. Third round, which is the semifinal, maybe 250, and the fourth round, which is the final, maybe 500. If these are the dollar amounts, this will lead to the overall winner receiving $1,000. The runner-up would get $500, etc. You can see how much you would win just based on the rounds you would get to. And what this does is it provides more prizes. It distributes the prizes over a wider range of teams. And it incentivizes teams to have solutions that may perform better than, focusing on solutions that are good solutions, but don't necessarily, need to be the best ever in order to win certain prize amounts. So all teams in the top half of the playoff, not counting playing games, would win at least some prize money. The explainability prizes, this year we're looking at doing a $500 pool for this. And so the top 3 scoring teams, as judged by the judging panel, will receive prizes. What this would likely look like is something like for first place, $250, second, $150, and third place, $100. Also, we are going to have a peer award for the ship customization aspect. And so what we're going to do is send out the designs for everybody's ships, and you will get to vote on whose ship you think is best. The top 3 will again get prizes similar in payouts to these, the first, second, and third. And in order to be considered for a prize, you must submit your team vote. Of course, you can't vote for your own team, but you're going to vote for the ones you think are best from everybody else. And so I know that's a lot of information, but and we may be changing things soon. Things are tentative. We will be solidifying them and setting them in stone during early spring semester. But with that, does anybody have any questions? And actually, before anybody asks any questions, I do want to show you that if we do stay with Fuzzy Asteroids, what you'll be doing is customizing the ship sprites themselves. And regardless of whether we stick with Fuzzy Asteroids or move to the new environment, there will be certain requirements you have to meet. There will be like size requirements. Of course, you can't have copyrighted or trademark materials, things like that. You can't have offensive material. And you can't alter the dimensions. But we will send all these out along with the requirements for when you have to submit them and things like that. But it should be a lot of fun, another way to see what everybody else is doing in the competition and have some fun. So with that, I will take any questions.
Hey, Tim, Nick here. Not really a question, but if there's no question, if we switch to this new game environment, as Tim said, it is Asteroids. It's the same rules. We're trying to make it very similar in terms of physics. It's just if you go through all the effort and train up a model for the current Fuzzy Asteroids, we definitely don't guarantee that its performance would be the same in whatever new environment we put out. But as far as your planning goes, definitely know that it's the same game with very similar physics and interactions for how that game operates.
And the interfacing will be very similar as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. Yeah, I mentioned that at the beginning, but it's good to mention that again. I wouldn't dedicate too much time to developing an agent in Fuzzy Asteroids, but it would likely still be valuable. And if you've already done it, it's definitely not wasted work. Yeah. But the new environment will be much easier to train with than Fuzzy Asteroids. Okay. Well, if nobody has any immediate questions, please ping us on either Slack or by email. Slack is preferred just for the quick engagement, but please don't hesitate to ask us any questions. Yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. We will send out notifications when we make the decision on the game change, and there will be at least one more presentation before winter break based on that. So with that, thanks for joining today. And again, ping us if you need anything. Thanks.